Are you feeling stuck? Are you feeling unfulfilled? Just blah? Well, maybe you've hit that phase of life that is known as a midlife crisis. But I want to tell you, you don't have to stay in that place of feeling stuck or blah, but rather you can be about to enter an amazing new chapter of life. And to encourage you, I have 5 amazing tips of how you can reinvent your life to become purposeful and passion-filled and on fire from your 40s, 50s, 60s onwards. And the last tip is by far the most important, so don't miss it. Now, before I dive into these tips, we hear midlife crisis as a term thrown around all the time, don't we? So it's worth just pausing for a minute and going, well, what is a midlife crisis? Now, we all know the stereotypes, the new younger partner, the new flashy car, but what's basically happening in these stereotypes is impulsive decision making. And instead of digging deep why you're feeling dissatisfied or blah or just not yourself, we fill that gap with impulse decisions. I'm not feeling it at work anymore. I'm going to become a travel blogger and travel the world. Those type of impulsive decisions are the very things that land us in hot water. And hence, midlife crisis becomes a very negative title. However, there is a definite period of introspection that comes when you do hit your 40s or your 50s or even as late as your 60s. And it comes with sitting back and assessing your life and going, is this it? Am I happy? Am I satisfied? Have I achieved what I wanted to achieve? And more often than not, there'll be some no's in there. Actually, I'm not so thrilled with where I'm at. Actually, I'm kind of over this career that I've done day in, day out for the last 20 years. Actually, I don't even know who I am now that the kids are growing and are moving out of home. There's all these factors that come into it at midlife, including all of the health and hormonal things that come into play. And I'm not just talking women. Men go through all these different emotions as well. And there's a definite questioning about, is success the thing I'm really chasing, or am I looking for something deeper now? Which actually is a gift. It's an actual gift that if you have reached your midlife years, and let's face it, so many people don't, that you have the chance to actually sit and reflect and look at what you've done, what you haven't done, add it all up and make some clear choices about what you would like your life to look like going forward. Because what's the alternative? You don't change, nothing changes. You spend the next 30, 40 years doing the same old, you scoot on into your senior years and that's it. See you later, world. And you've just lived a life that was just not really what you wanted. The reality is, once you hit midlife crisis, and that can be brought on like a life situation happening with your children moving out of home, or perhaps it's the passing of your parents, or perhaps, like I said in my book, 21 Hacks to Rock Your Midlife, it's a big birthday with a 0 on the end. You've turned 40, or you've turned 50, or you've turned 60. And there are all times when it's worth pausing and reflecting, because what's really exciting is you can then go on to create something different that truly reflects who you want to be, what you want to do in this next season ahead. Now, I know this not only because I've walked alongside midlifers for well over a decade now, and I've coached a number of them when I was working as a personal trainer or life coach or through my books or workshops. I also know it from my own life because I have often shared my story at 43, how my youngest was heading off to uni and I had that moment of, oh my gosh, who am I now? You see, I had actually put my entire career previously of being a professional musician and prior to that, a high school teacher and then a tertiary lecturer. I put all of that aside in those previous 6 years when I took on homeschooling my 2 kids when they were in high school, simply because both of them were so involved with their sports at such an elite level that they were both literally traveling the world. And so for those 6 years, I was the taxi driver, I was the cook, I was the principal, I was the teacher, all of those things. Oh, and I washed a heck of a lot of laundry. You have 2 kids doing sports 24/7, I tell you that laundry pile is pretty nasty. So when my youngest, my daughter, was off to university, I truly had a moment where I was so excited for her that she'd done so well, that she was getting all of these places offered to her. And I really felt like I'd been sucker punched because so much of who I was in those 6 years had been putting my children and my family first. And I absolutely loved those years. I really did. And as I talk about in one of my books, I faced three options, and chances are you might be facing those same three options. One of them was to sit where I was and just pine for what I had. Now, I remember when I did a poll in the Rocking Midlife community group a couple of years ago, and I said, how are you coping with empty nest? And I had a number of people make comments, oh, we've done this and I did this and I cried and then we worked through it, we did this. And I still remember to this day, one lady wrote, I haven't coped. I'm not coping. I cry every day. And my heart just broke for that woman. And I knew that if I allowed myself, I could be in the same position because, like I said, I loved that 6 years. I really loved being a homeschool mum to my kids. It was hard work. It was a sacrifice financially for our family and on every other level, but I absolutely loved it. Now, I could have just stayed in that spot and pined for those days, but I chose not to. Box number 2 was to go back to what I was originally trained in, which was music and teaching and playing and lecturing. But when you've been a homeschooler, your philosophy kind of changes. And the thought of going back into a high school or back into some type of teaching environment to teach other people's kids, I was done. I'd done that in my early years. I didn't want to go back and have to retrain with my degree or go back into a classroom situation. No, thank you. So I took box number 3. And box number 3 was to actually take the time out and assess my life and assess those things that were important to me and then choose to reinvent my life for the next season. And that's when I decided to go back and train as a personal trainer. So I'm going to share with you 5 points that were part of my decision-making in the hope that they encourage you and help you in your decision-making if you're at this point of time where you're assessing who you are and who you want to be in this midlife season. And let me just add one thing, a midlife crisis, and those of you listening on the podcast, I'm doing the little finger quotes here, a midlife crisis often isn't a one-off event. I'm turning 60 in October next year. I've got a year to go in my 50s, and I'm already thinking, what do I want to achieve to finish off my 50s? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to be speaking on and known for when I hit 60? I'm gearing up with that now. So if you're someone who's saying, yep, Kat, this is great, I'm well past 40, this is for you too. We don't sit and stay the same person decade to decade, unless we really want to, in which case the whole world passes us by and you're still the one wearing the 80s haircut, the 80s clothes, listening to your tapes and in a time warp. I don't want to be that person. I want to be someone who's still interacting with the world and able to engage and able to give back and be part of it. And I kind of think that you might be too. So let's dive in now to 5 powerful tips that have helped me and will help you reinvent your life to be even more passion-fueled and purposeful going forward. Number 1, this might seem a really obvious one, but it is to embrace change. I needed to embrace change. I had to go back to school. And the ironic thing in my choice of being a personal trainer was that I actually hadn't personally graced the door of a gym for a good decade. Sure, I was the mum taking my fantastic kids to all their trainings, but I was unfit as anything. And so not only did I have to go and study again, I actually had to work on other things too. I had to get fit as well. I don't know where my brain was at the time, but 2 weeks into the course, I found myself having to cope with fitness assessments. I remember falling flat on my face, literally, during an agility test. And all these kids, and let me add, all these kids were younger than my own kids, stood there mortified as if they'd just seen their mother fall on her face. It was pretty humiliating, but it also fired up something in my belly. But embracing change is actually critical to moving forward. Like I said, it's so easy to stay with what we know, what we're comfortable with. But the problem is you get comfortable and life passes you by. And at some point, there's got to be something in you that goes, I don't want to stay in this place. So therefore, I'm prepared to try a different routine, to try a new course, or to try working with a different type of teacher or mentor, or whatever. Embracing change will keep you moving forward, sometimes faster, sometimes not. Sometimes it's really, really challenging. Don't get me wrong, embracing change isn't always easy and comfortable. Like falling on my face in front of that class of kids. It's not comfortable. It's pretty embarrassing at times. But if you have that attitude of, I'll dust myself off and I'll just keep going until I nail it, you will be amazed how much you achieve in this next season. The byproduct of change leads us to tip number 2 in how to reinvent your life after 40. And that is to reevaluate your priorities. This is so critical. And midlife is the perfect time to do this because you have this little gap of time where you can go, what are my priorities? Are my priorities still working for that particular boss? Are my priorities now shifting to be about being there for my parents, or about starting something new and fresh, or about picking up something that I put aside all those years ago? What are your priorities? It's interesting. A lot of writers talk about there being a real shift, particularly for men, from success to significance. It's like those first 20 years of your career, you've been trying to get up that pole. You've been chasing success. You're the man, you're the woman. You're out to smash that glass ceiling and get as high up there as you can. And then you get there. And for a lot of people, it's like, okay, is this it? Is this all I do now? Is this it? And there becomes a real shift, and it becomes more about, but I want to do something of significance that makes a difference. So I can look back and not just go, well, for 30 years, I made that guy's business grow. I actually want to do something that is of significance. And it doesn't necessarily mean you chuck in your job, I should add, because it may well be you've reached that pinnacle in your career. You're happy where you're at. You're happy with your paycheck, but there's that little ache inside to do something of significance, which might mean stepping out and finding a charity that you love and actually getting hands-on, or getting involved with a local community board, or using some skills that you have to make a difference to people's lives. My mum has always been an incredible craft person. In fact, she started off as a primary teacher, ended up being an arts specialist for many, many years. And even though her hands are incredibly gnarled with arthritis now, she still every year knits dozens of teddy bears, these little teddy bears, to pop in Christmas boxes. I think it's called Samaritan's Purse. And they send these boxes overseas to children in all these different countries with pencils and school things for Christmas. Every year faithfully, ever since I can remember, Mum's just used her skills. Even though she was a busy teacher, she had a family she was raising, she would still be doing all of these things as well that she found fulfilling. And all these years later, even gnarled with arthritis, she's still using skills she has to make a difference. And she's coming up to her mid-80s, yet she still has significance and fulfillment because of what she's doing. Because she worked out what her priorities were. And her priorities weren't just sitting and knitting for herself, or just sitting and watching telly and enjoying her passive retirement. Both of my parents have always served and still do. So what are your priorities? Because taking the time to actually look at them play a huge part in helping you then get clearer about what it is you want to reinvent your life to do or to be. Okay, so you're embracing change and you've reevaluated your priorities. That brings us to number 3, which is invest in learning and growth. When I say invest, it doesn't necessarily mean financial, although in my case it's meant financial. It may mean in time. But the reality is, if you're going to change anything in your life, be it your health, your body, a skill, there's going to be an investment of time and energy and potentially money. And at some point, you need to be okay with doing that. Obviously, I'm not saying empty out the family account when, cost of living is what it is. We all know that. But you've probably spent the past 20 odd years putting your kids first, spending money on them first, all their uniforms, all their hobbies, all their outings, all of those things. This is that time to look at your own life and go, do I need to invest in things in myself so that I can build a future that is going to be fulfilling and purposeful? So being prepared to invest time, energy, and money is actually a game changer. If you're truly going to put the action behind reinventing your life, sometimes you've got to have a bit of skin in the game. And that bit of skin might be an amount of money that you've put down. And that amount of money hopefully will be enough to make you go, shoot, I actually need to follow through and make this work. And that's a powerful thing. It's not too late. It's not too late to invest in yourself and to retrain or to do what it is you need to do to help you embrace that change and reinvent. So this next tip is particularly important because while you're investing in yourself and you're embracing change and you're working out your priorities and all those things, number 4 is look after your health and well-being. Now, we women in particular, we know that our 40s and 50s are a really fun roller coaster, and it's all called menopause, once you hit that age demographic. I know for me, it's been quite a challenge health-wise. And I have talked a number of times about living with chronic pain and now invisible illness, but you still have a choice in that to pursue health and well-being, because that's going to be part of you reinventing your life and being able to make the most of that life as you go forward. What's the point of embracing change, retraining, investing, doing all these things, knowing what you want to do in your next chapter, and then having your bodies fall apart on you? It's pretty devastating. And it's something I still have to push through nearly every day. I don't want that to sound condemning either, because I know that there'll be people listening in who are facing those challenges. And it may be you have to take time out for a while to work on your health and well-being. Because the reality is, if your body's not working, if your well-being's not good, if your mental health's not good, it will make it difficult to be resilient and push through when you're making all these changes. And like I said, change can be uncomfortable. No, let me rephrase it. Change will be uncomfortable. So you want to give yourself your best chance at getting through it. And part of that best fighting chance is to prioritize your health and well-being, so that you are able to truly live out that amazing life that you are reinventing for yourself. Now, a wonderful example of this, and it's a very left field example, okay? But a wonderful example of this is Martha Stewart. Now, here, stay with me. Some of you are already going, yeah, but hang on. She went to jail. What's so good about her? Yes, she went to jail. I think it was tax related, but she came out of jail healthier, stronger, fitter, sharper mentally than the woman that went in. And she's actually had so much more success now than she had prior to that time. She had a time in her life that could have totally derailed her. But instead of just shriveling up and going, that's it, game over, this lady worked out, got healthy, got herself together, and came out stronger than ever. So what are the areas in your life that you need to be working on health-wise? I guarantee that if you prioritize things like getting your water, getting enough sleep, looking at your nutrition, looking at if you move your body, look at your hormones, all the things, as well as your mental health, you start working at those things, you're going to find that you are stronger and more able to navigate all the things that come with stretching and growing. You'll be so much more empowered for it. And finally, the most powerful tip of all that I promised you at the very beginning. And it's also in some ways the most simple, and chances are you're going to go, well, duh. However, it's also the one thing that I noticed in all my years of working with women that a lot of women don't. If you want to reinvent your life in your 40s, 50s, or beyond, you need to take bold action. And not just any action, bold, intentional action. It's not just turning up and going, well, I'm here. No, it's here and doing the things that you need to do to get you to where you want to be. I know it sounds so simple, but so many people balk on this step, because it's not just taking bold action once and signing up for the training course. It's taking bold action the next day in sticking to your timetable and turning up and doing the hard graft that's needed. It's taking that bold action that says, sorry, I'm not going to be so available this week to your regular party friends because I'm stepping out and I'm committing to taking action to get me from A to B in this next season. Taking bold action will affect everything in your life. However, it is the key that will get you from midlife crisis to midlife reinvention, to living a life that is fulfilling and passion-fueled and sets your heart on fire. It is the steps that you take that get you from A to B, that get you through all those other tips of stepping out and trying new things and looking after your health. Taking bold, intentional action is what will get you through them. Isn't that exciting? So you have there 5 powerful tips that will help you go from midlife crisis to midlife reinvention. And you know what's exciting? You can revisit those tips every 6 months if you want to. You can revisit those tips every year. Every year can be a new evolution on your reinvention. How does that sound? Because the reality is we don't stay stagnant. It's not like, yay, I've arrived. I thought I'd arrived when I kicked in as a personal trainer. But then the next lot of growth happened when I was there in the gym on the floor, learning actually how to do the steps to be a working trainer. And then that went up a notch when I started training groups. Then that went up a notch when I started going online with my training. And then that went up a notch when I dropped the training off and I started writing books. And then that went up a notch when I started the podcast, and so on and so on. Life isn't still. And you have that choice of if you just go with the flow or if you make intentional steps that move you the way that you want life to go. Now, we all know stuff happens. We all know there's stuff that's out of our hands. But I still guarantee if you follow these 5 steps, you are way ahead of the person who's done nothing and just gone with the flow. In short, reinventing your life isn't just a possibility. It's something you can do. It is powerful. And if you can follow those 5 tips of embracing change, of reevaluating your priorities, of investing in learning and growth, of prioritizing your health and well-being, and of taking bold, intentional action, you will get there. Please like, please subscribe, please share this episode out and leave a review so that other midlifers can find this video or podcast recording and be encouraged that they can reinvent their lives too. Make sure you leave me a comment. I would love to hear which tip resonated with you. And I'd love to hear if you're already on your reinvention journey. Let me know how that's going. I would love to cheer you on. Take care. I'll see you on the next episode.